What the heart won't say. The pair returned to base on time. There was a renewed synergy between them. Mateo and Do-Hwan talked and laughed like the old days. They ate together, carried out service tasks together, and when possible stole quiet moments just for themselves. If there was ever a silver lining to mandatory military service, none of the men could have asked for a better experience than what Mateo and Do-Hwan shared with one another. By the end of the first term, Do-Hwan was calling home less and less. Amara noticed. Something was different. He was less communicative, no longer eager to hear from her. He didn't sound like the man she knew. When she showed up for Friends' Day, she wanted nothing more than to run into his arms, to feel them around her. But she didn't. Instead, she stuck to his side like glue, beaming with excitement as he explained every little thing about base life. Wide-eyed and giddy, she followed his lead as he toured her around the designated areas. She brought thoughtful gifts for his platoon mates, cool, quirky things that earned genuine smiles. She even brought gifts for his senior leaders. When Do-Hwan introduced her to the tactical unit, the guys greeted her warmly. He made sure she shook every hand. When it was Mateos' turn, he held her hand longer than necessary, squeezing it just slightly too firm. His polite smile didn't reach his eyes. He'd imagined scowling, imagined somehow intimidating her, telegraphing that Do-Hwan no longer belonged to her, but he couldn't do it. He only managed a tight, neutral smile as he took her hand. In his mind, Amara had been an obstacle, the invader, the threat to what he and Do-Hwan had built, but reality hit hard and fast. It wasn't her. It was him. He was the one who had stepped into something already full. Her energy was so light, so ethereal, it was impossible to hate her. She was genuinely invested in Do-Hwan's world. Every question she asked was thoughtful. Every reaction she gave was authentic. And the way Do-Hwan responded to her. Mateo noticed everything, the way he hovered near her, how he placed himself between her and the rest of the barracks, the way he casually touched her shoulder or arm, or stepped in when a senior soldier asked her a question. He protected her, anchored her, spoke with her like no one else was in the room. Everyone adored her, and Mateo hated that the most. What did he have to offer that she didn't? What could he give that she hadn't already? Later that day, just before Amara was set to leave, she and Do-Hwan slipped away to a blind spot, a quiet nook on the grounds he and Mateo often used to talk in the evenings. Mateo had once thought of it as their place, but now it wasn't. Do-Hwan wrapped his arms around Amara and held her tightly. He inhaled her scent, buried his face into her hair. His lips touched the nape of her neck, and then, quickly, they kissed. It wasn't long, but it was full of feeling. He pulled back first, and in the quietest whisper, he leaned into her ear and said, "Come on, it's time to go." After that visit, Amara wouldn't see Do-Hwan for another 6 weeks. He scored another off-base pass, and this time, he went home to her. He intended to lay bare his thoughts, not just what he'd been doing, but who he'd been doing it with. Do-Hwan knew exactly how appalling his behavior had been. The guilt gnawed at him. He loved Amara, he really did. It wasn't that he didn't love her, it's that his feelings for Mateo had started to take up more space. In that motel, he had made himself a promise. He would break things off with Amara. Amara was excited. Do-Hwan was finally coming home. He'd spend the whole weekend with her. She prepped the house like it was a holiday. She stocked the fridge and cabinets with all his favorite things, picked up several bottles of wine and champagne, and assumed they'd order in their first night. She'd waxed, plucked, and polished every inch of herself. A sauna steam for glow, a facial, 3 new outfits from the lingerie store, plus her fail-safe tank top and panties. Something new, something familiar. Whatever would get his attention. She wanted the weekend to be special. She'd sensed his distance for weeks now, brushing it off as adjustment struggles. But after her visit to the base, something changed. One of his friends had mentioned how lucky Do-Hwan was to have so many beautiful women visiting. What was that guy's name again? Oh yeah, Mateo. Then came the slip. When she locked eyes with Mateo, he blurted it out. Grace. Amara froze. Do-Hwan hadn't said Grace's name in over a year. He'd sworn he wasn't interested in her anymore, that she wasn't someone he liked that way. The seed planted itself. Whatever was going on with Do-Hwan, Amara thought she could fix it. They just needed time together, time to reconnect. After all, there's no way he could resist her. The door chime sounded. "Hello," Do-Hwan called. "Hello." Amara ran out from the living room, jumped into his arms, and held him tight. Tears came fast and unexpected. She could barely see through them, and Do-Hwan held her just as tight. A soft whimper escaped her. She thought she'd be stronger than this, but her heart had other plans. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I think I'm overwhelmed. I'm just so happy to have you home." She stepped back and brushed her cheeks. "Are you hungry? Can I make something for us?" But instead, they went out for lunch, taking the scenic route to kill time. Do-Hwan reminded himself that tonight, or tomorrow, he had to come clean. But for now, they wandered the downtown streets, shopped a little, and made light conversation. Do-Hwan had tried to plan every date night staple into one weekend. The exhaustion was real. They skipped coffee after the movie and called it a night. When they got home, Amara volunteered to shower first. Emerging later in oversized sweats and a t-shirt, she handed Do-Hwan a towel. "The hot water will make you feel good," she said, with a casual smile. While Do-Hwan was in the shower, Amara transformed. She oiled her pecan-toned skin, pulled her hair into a loose top bun, and slipped into a sheer royal purple baby doll with matching panties. Her freesia-scented body oil layered beneath a smoky perfume. The black stilettos made her legs look endless. She even spritzed perfume over her underwear. Every detail, perfect. Candles flickered around the room. The wine had been breathing. She left the television on to mask the silence. She didn't want to think about what might come after this. Tonight, she was just a woman in love, trying to keep the one man she wanted. Do-Hwan stayed under the stream too long. The hot water helped clear his mind, but not enough. He kept thinking of Mateo. The time they spent together, the way Mateo looked at him, the butterflies, the confusion, the guilt. Was he gay? Bisexual? It didn't matter. He felt something real. And he'd made Mateo a promise. He'd break up with Amara. Do-Hwan turned off the water. The steam clung to him like fog in a dream. He hadn't brought clothes into the bathroom and had to return to find them folded neatly near the door. It didn't occur to him how much thought Amara had put into it. He was distracted, unmoored. He got dressed, returned to the living room, and sank into the couch. The TV played on, but he didn't really see it. His mind was circling a drain, and then he heard it. The unmistakable sound of high heels clicking on hardwood. Amara stepped into view. "Would you like a glass of wine?" she asked, her voice light and teasing. The visual, her scent, her outfit, her eyes, was everything, and it shook him. Because all he could think was, how am I supposed to break her heart? Do-Hwan was stunned into silence. He could utter no words. Standing before him, Amara looked breathtaking, like something out of a magazine spread. Her skin seemed to glow. She sparkled in the low light, shimmering with effort and intention. "Wine, bae," she smiled coyly. Let me pour you a little. I'll have some too." She extended her hand to him. "Come with me." Do-Hwan couldn't move. He looked her up and down, from heel to that perfect updo that always undid him. That hairstyle. He'd once teased her to never wear it outside the house. It was his weakness, his desire. She'd even used his favorite oriental hairpin to hold it in place. He imagined pulling it free and watching those soft curls tumble down her shoulders. And then she touched him. Her hand on his brought him crashing back to the moment. She straddled him, locking him tightly between her thighs. "You look beautiful," Do-Hwan said quietly. "You like my outfit?" she asked, with a small smile. "The outfit's nice, but it's nothing without you in it." Amara pulled his face toward hers. Her lips brushed against his, then caught his bottom lip in a playful bite. She giggled like a schoolgirl. A flirt. A lover. A woman trying to reclaim her space. "Come with me," she whispered. Then she bit his neck, harder this time. Not cruel, but enough to send chills down his spine. Goosebumps prickled his skin. Did he just whisper, "Don't stop"? She smiled. She thought she heard it, or maybe she just hoped she did. She rose from his lap, slowly, sensually, and extended her hand again. This time, Do-Hwan followed. The sunlight crept through the curtains. Do-Hwan's eyes flinched at the brightness of morning. Amara was curled in his arms, face tucked into his chest. Her curls brushed his skin. He barely moved, just watched her breathe. This wasn't what he'd planned. He was supposed to have the conversation, to tell her the truth. Instead, he'd fallen back into something familiar, something comforting, intimate. He'd kissed her softly, and it had driven him crazy. Her skin always did. And he knew, with a terrible ache, that he'd miss this. The quiet, the noise, the mess, the way she smelled like sunlight and flowers and freesia oil. He would miss her, but that wasn't why he needed to leave her. It wasn't about Mateo being better. It was about Mateo being different. Mateo had stirred something in him he never knew existed. Something terrifying. Something real. Loving a man wasn't just different. It was alien to him. Foreign. Vulnerable. Who could he even talk to about it? His friends? His unit? Who would understand? No one. Amara stirred beside him. Her eyes fluttered open. She smiled, small and sleepy. "Good morning," she whispered into his chest. "How long have you been awake?" "Not long," he lied. She shifted under the covers and cupped his face, guiding his eyes down to meet hers. "I love you," she said gently, almost in a whisper. Then she said, "You're troubled. You've been for a long time." He winced. "It's okay to let this go," she added. Her voice tried to be steady, but her heart leaked into her words. Do-Hwan said nothing. His expression was pained. "We can talk later," he offered. Amara leaned in and kissed him. Slow, yet gentle. As she pulled back, he followed. Kissed her back, like it was a promise he wasn't sure he could keep. Their bodies tangled again, a familiar rhythm rising between them. The heat returned. Do-Hwan hovered above her, watching her like he was committing the moment to memory. A single tear slid down Amara's cheek. "We have today," she said. "We have today," he repeated. She lay still beneath him, almost like a sculpture, open, vulnerable, waiting. He traced her curves, touched her with the reverence of a man who didn't want to forget, and when he reached her chest, he teased her nipples until they responded. She pressed his hand down harder. He kissed one, then the other, and moved toward her collarbone, but something stopped him. His expression flickered. She noticed. He pulled back, hands still on her sides, but his eyes distant. "What's wrong?" she asked, softly. There was a pause, and then, almost panic-stricken, he asked, "When was the last time you had a physical?" A wave of relief had washed over Do-Hwan the moment he saw Amara's message. Okay. Heart. Kiss. 3 small symbols that allowed his lungs to fill again. She was safe. The lump wasn't cancer. She was still in the world. But he didn't text her back. It wasn't because he didn't care. It was because he cared too much. Just knowing she was okay loosened the knot in his chest, but it also sharpened the guilt he carried. He reread her words again and again, wishing he could will himself to respond. To say thank you, or I'm so glad, or I miss you. But he didn't. He kept hearing her voice from that last morning together. The quiet resolve when she told him they were done. Not because she didn't love him, but because she finally loved herself more. It should have made things easier. It didn't. Because even now, as much as Do-Hwan wanted to let her go, cleanly, kindly, some part of him couldn't. Not yet. He didn't want to be the one who ended it. Not really. Not after everything they'd shared. And then there was Mateo. Mateo, who made him feel something he hadn't fully understood until it was too late. Mateo, whose silence lately had cut deeper than he wanted to admit. Do-Hwan didn't want to lose him either. He was torn between what was right, what was fair, and what his heart selfishly wanted. And the truth was, he didn't know how not to be selfish. Mateo didn't know why he kept checking his phone. There hadn't been a message. Not in days. Not even a voice note or a stupid emoji. Nothing since family day. Nothing since that night he'd danced too close, laughed too loud, and felt the dangerous flutter of hope when Do-Hwan didn't pull away. He told himself it didn't mean anything. That Do-Hwan had a lot on his plate. Military training. That girl, Amara, the one who'd shown up, then vanished again like she belonged to another world. But Mateo knew better. Something had shifted. He just didn't know if it had shifted toward him or away. He caught himself rereading the last text he'd sent, as if it would morph into something more meaningful just by staring at it. Don't forget to rest. You look like you haven't slept in 3 days. A half joke, a whole truth. He'd wanted it to land softly. Do-Hwan never replied. Now Mateo sat alone in the mess hall, watching the others jostle and joke like the world was still intact. His tray was untouched, his spoon turning slow circles in a bowl of lukewarm stew. He couldn't focus, couldn't train. Every time he lined up in formation, his eyes found the back of Do-Hwan's neck. Every time he lay in bed, his thoughts folded back into that weekend, into skin, sweat, silence, and the way Do-Hwan had rested his forehead against Mateo's shoulder like he was afraid to breathe. Mateo hadn't wanted to ask for more, but he also couldn't go back to pretending it hadn't happened. He thought about approaching him, cornering him in the barracks maybe, or finding him by the river where they used to sneak cigarettes. But the idea of being met with rejection, of that familiar distance returning to Do-Hwan's eyes, made his chest ache. He didn't want to be a mistake, or worse, a placeholder. So instead, he stayed quiet and watched Do-Hwan move through the world like he was carrying too many ghosts. Mateo wondered if Amara was one of them. He leaned back, eyes tracing the cloudy sky outside the cafeteria window. Rain was coming. He could smell it in the air. Maybe that was why everything inside him felt heavy. Or maybe it was because the only person he wanted to talk to was the one who wouldn't even look at him anymore. Mateo didn't even know if he was allowed to be mad. He paced the length of the dormitory hallway twice before stopping outside the stairwell door, the place where they'd shared cigarettes, the place where Do-Hwan once kissed him so gently it made Mateo's throat close. Now the air felt stale. He hadn't spoken to Do-Hwan in days. Not really. They exchanged routine orders during drills, nods during inspections, but nothing behind the eyes, nothing personal. It was like Do-Hwan had flipped a switch and gone back to soldier mode. Mateo didn't know if that was guilt or shame. Or maybe it was just indifference, and that was the part that made Mateo feel stupid. He didn't know where he stood, if he stood anywhere at all. Then, as if summoned by thought, he heard the door creak open. Heavy boots, familiar stride. Do-Hwan stepped into the stairwell with that same haunted stillness he'd been carrying all week. Mateo didn't move, didn't speak, just stood, back to the wall, arms crossed, waiting. Do-Hwan noticed him after a beat. He paused, expression unreadable. "You looking for air?" he asked. Mateo shrugged. "Wasn't sure what I was looking for." Do-Hwan nodded once, then leaned against the opposite wall. Silence swelled between them. The hum of the building, distant shouts from the training yard. Mateo waited, counting his own breath like it might steady him. "You could have said something," Mateo finally muttered. "I didn't know what to say." Mateo laughed once, bitter. "You disappear, after everything that happened, and I'm supposed to just guess how you feel." "I wasn't trying to disappear." "You did." Do-Hwan ran a hand down his face. He looked tired, more than tired, like he hadn't been sleeping, like his body was moving, but his mind was caught somewhere far behind. "I got Amara's test results," he said quietly. "She's okay." Mateo nodded. "That's good." "Yeah." Another silence. Mateo shifted, trying not to crack. "So what now? You two, are you—" "No," Do-Hwan said, voice firm and low. "We're not." Mateo's breath caught. He hadn't realized how much he needed to hear it until the words landed. I kept my promise, Do-Hwan added. We're not together. I made sure of it before I came back. Mateo turned to face him fully now. Then why do you still look like you're holding your breath? Do-Hwan didn't answer right away. He just stared at the floor, then finally lifted his eyes. Because I don't know how to be with you without hurting someone. Mateo's jaw tightened. Maybe don't make me the one who pays for that. Do-Hwan flinched, like the words cut deeper than expected, but he nodded slowly, like he understood, like maybe, just maybe, he was ready to stop running from what was between them. Mateo didn't reach out. Not yet. But he didn't leave either. And that was something. They stood in silence a while longer. The rain began to fall outside, soft, steady, cleansing. And though nothing had been resolved, something in the air felt just a little less heavy. The hum of the vending machine was the only sound. Fluorescent light buzzed overhead, sickly and cold. Mateo stopped in the doorway. Do-Hwan sat slouched on the couch, elbows on knees. His phone lay face down on the table, untouched. That alone made Mateo's pulse spike. No messages tonight. He swallowed, stepped inside. Couldn't sleep. His voice was quieter than he meant it to be. Do-Hwan glanced up. The look in his eyes, raw, unguarded, nearly knocked the breath from Mateo's lungs. No, Do-Hwan said softly. A beat passed. Not much reason to. Mateo's chest tightened. What happened? Hovered on his tongue, but he bit it back. He sat down across from him, too far and yet too close. The air between them felt sharp, thin as glass. I've missed talking to you, Do-Hwan said suddenly, voice rough. I'm sorry I disappeared. Mateo looked at him, truly looked. The wear in his face, the way his hands trembled just slightly. He's not hers anymore. The thought sliced clean through him, terrifying and electric all at once. He told himself not to hope. And yet, the words came before he could stop them. I've missed you too, Mateo said. The truth tasted like fire. Their eyes held. Too long. The world narrowed to the space between them. Neither moved, neither spoke, but something passed. Thick as smoke, sharp as longing. Mateo forced himself to stand, fingers clenched at his sides. Not tonight, not like this. But as he turned, Do-Hwan's voice caught him. Stay. One word, fragile, unsteady. Mateo froze. His heart cracked open all over again. When he sat back down, closer this time, he didn't speak. Neither did Do-Hwan. They sat in the quiet, two broken edges trying not to cut. And for the first time, the silence between them felt full, not empty. Weekend leave. Do-Hwan brings Mateo to his apartment. The sound of water stopped. Mateo sat frozen on the edge of the bed, hands clasped tight in his lap, his heartbeat too loud in the quiet. He heard the soft thud of footsteps across the bathroom tile. A pause. Then the door creaked open. Do-Hwan stepped into the room, towel slung low on his hips, another draped around his neck. His hair was wet, dripping faint trails down his shoulders. He looked relaxed, unaware. Until he saw Mateo. The shift was immediate, subtle, but there. The way his shoulders pulled back, the flicker in his eyes. His smile faltered. You okay? He asked, voice gentle. Mateo nodded. Yeah. Too quick, too flat. Do-Hwan crossed to the dresser, toweling his hair. You hungry? We could order something. Mateo didn't answer. The silence stretched, heavy and tight. Do-Hwan turned back to him. What's going on? Mateo didn't look at him. He couldn't. He stared at the nightstand, at the phone. She texted you. Do-Hwan stilled. Mateo felt it. The shift in the room. Not shock. Not even defensiveness. Just stillness. She did, Do-Hwan said finally, a few days ago. Mateo let out a slow breath through his nose. His hands curled into fists. "Why didn't you tell me?" Do-Hwan took a step closer. "Because it didn't mean anything." "To you," Mateo said quietly. Do-Hwan stopped. The towel slipped off his neck and onto the floor. He didn't move to pick it up. Mateo finally looked up, eyes searching his. "It mattered to me." The words weren't angry. They were small, honest. The kind of words you only say when you don't want to fight. You just want to be seen. Do-Hwan crossed the rest of the room slowly, sat beside him on the bed, careful not to crowd him. "It wasn't a secret," he said. "I didn't reply. I didn't want to. I just didn't think it was something I had to explain." Mateo looked away again, jaw tight. "I don't want to be someone you hide things from." "You're not." "I didn't know that," Mateo whispered. "Not in this space, not with her shadow everywhere." That cut deeper than either of them expected. Do-Hwan winced like the words had teeth. "I've tried to make this place mine again," he said, "but it's slow. Some ghosts don't leave just because you want them to." Mateo's voice cracked, just barely. "It's hard not to feel like one of them." That broke something open. Do-Hwan reached for him then, not with urgency, but with reverence. He took Mateo's hand, threading their fingers together. "You're not a ghost," he said. "You're the one who brought me back to life." Mateo's throat worked around the swell of emotion. He didn't pull away. Do-Hwan leaned in, resting his forehead to Mateo's temple. "I want you here, in this room, in my space, in my life. Fully." Silence. Then, a breath. Mateo turned just enough for their noses to brush. He didn't kiss him. Not yet. But he didn't need to. In that moment, he believed him. The past hadn't vanished. The ghosts weren't gone. But they no longer stood between them, and for now, that was enough. Later, after the words had settled, and the silence between them had softened, they lay together under the dim lamplight, limbs tangled, breath shared. The apartment had gone still. Outside, the city murmured through the window, car tires over wet pavement, a faint dog bark, someone's music drifting from a block away. But here, in this room, there was only the sound of heartbeats sinking. Mateo lay on his side, head tucked beneath Do-Hwan's chin, one hand resting lightly on the curve of his stomach. Do-Hwan's arm was wrapped around him, strong and loose, like he couldn't decide whether to protect or just hold. Mateo had never felt so safe. "I kept the sheets," Do-Hwan murmured. Mateo blinked. "What?" "The ones on the bed. I got rid of everything else after she left. But the sheets, I don't know. They still smelled like lavender and clean laundry. I didn't have the heart to throw them out." Mateo didn't speak. Do-Hwan shifted, pulling him a little closer. "I washed them. A lot. It's just habit now. But tonight, I noticed they don't smell like her anymore." Mateo smiled against his chest. "What do they smell like now?" "You." The words settled deep in Mateo's chest. They lay like that for a while. The quiet not just comfortable, but sacred. Do-Hwan traced small circles on the inside of Mateo's wrist. Mateo played with the hem of Do-Hwan's shirt, fingertips barely brushing skin. "I've never," Mateo began, but the words caught. Do-Hwan waited, gave him time. Mateo tried again. "I've never had this before. Not like this." "I know. I keep waiting for it to disappear." Do-Hwan's fingers stilled. He pressed a kiss to the top of Mateo's head. "It won't." "You can't promise that." "I can promise tonight." That was enough. Mateo tilted his head back, and Do-Hwan leaned down. Their kiss was unhurried, quiet, not driven by want, but by need. The need to feel present, the need to feel chosen, the need to feel real. Afterward, they stayed tangled. No urgency to part. No need to fill the silence. Mateo rested his forehead against Do-Hwan's collarbone and whispered, "Don't disappear again." Do-Hwan's arm tightened. "I won't." Outside, the city breathed. Inside, they did too. Together, and for the first time in months, Mateo fell asleep without fear. Later that night, Do-Hwan explained to Mateo that Amara had reached out, again, and said she needed to speak with him. Mateo froze. She wished me well, Do-Hwan added quietly. Mateo paused. Does she know that we're dating? No. The word barely passed Do-Hwan's lips. Mateo wanted to ask why she didn't know, why he hadn't told her. But he swallowed it. He didn't want to ruin the night or the little peace they had while on break. The next day came swiftly. They woke tangled up, but with nerves coiled tight beneath their skin. Neither mentioned the meeting. Instead, they moved through their morning ritual. Coffee, music, eggs with too much hot sauce. They smiled politely. They didn't say much. Both tried to manifest a normal they didn't feel. By 11 a.m., Do-Hwan was in the shower. At 12:30, he texted Amara to confirm. They'd meet at a cafe they used to frequent, midway between her place and his. By 1 p.m., Do-Hwan kissed Mateo goodbye. I'll be back by 4:30. Promise. Mateo smiled. Light, casual. It's just a few hours. I'm sure there's a series I forgot to finish. He watched Do-Hwan walk out the door. At 1:05 p.m., he checked the clock. Again at 1:10. Every tick of time felt like something stretching apart inside his chest. The apartment smelled like Do-Hwan's shampoo, but Mateo could still feel the imprint of Amara, her shadow on the walls, her memory in the cushions, the drawer that still stuck the same way it always had when she lived here. He told himself he was going to get lunch, that's all, but his feet carried him elsewhere. He boarded the 4X train, traveled 3 stops in silence, climbed the stairs 2 at a time. When he hit the street level, he didn't hesitate. His body moved with a purpose his mind hadn't given him permission for. And then he saw them, Do-Hwan and Amara, in an embrace, arm in arm. Her face turned toward his, close, too close. Mateo stopped mid-step. The image sliced through him. Her face was soft, red from crying. Mateo's stomach twisted. Of course, she cried. That's how she did it. Tears first, sympathy second, control third. He felt the heat rise fast, a boil under the skin. It hissed up his throat like steam. Who do you think you are? He whispered to himself. Do-Hwan is mine, not yours. Mine. He couldn't stop himself. His feet moved before he could think. By the time he reached them, they had pulled apart, laughing softly, exchanging polite farewells. It didn't matter. Mateo saw everything. He hated the way she was dressed. Cute, effortless, intentional. He hated the way she tilted her head when she smiled at Do-Hwan, the way her fingers grazed his arm. He hated that she looked up at him, like he still belonged to her. Pitch. The word bloomed sharp in Mateo's head. His blood roared in his ears. He was beyond composure. Amara was nervous. So nervous. She'd worked hard to let go of the past with Do-Hwan. She moved her things out of his apartment. Then she left the one she'd rented after they broke up. A full reset. New address, new job. She'd started working part-time at a local florist. Something simple. Something joyful. Deliveries made her happy. Seeing the faces of customers as they received her arrangements. She'd recently learned to design bouquets herself, and for once, she felt like she had a gift. A real one. Things had been going well. Until they weren't. At first it was just fatigue. Nothing serious. But soon she started cancelling on friends. She'd wake up drained. Then came the nausea. Fierce. Inconvenient. She chalked it up to bad food. Or maybe a bug. Then one afternoon, everything tilted. The smell of someone's cooking in the hallway had nearly brought her to her knees. She was hunched over her front door, fumbling the keypad, retching between numbers. Her sweet elderly neighbor, Miss Kim, heard her struggling. "Hold on, dear," she said gently, helping Amara finish keying in the code. By the time Amara made it to the bathroom, her body had surrendered. She barely remembered closing the door. When she finally emerged, trembling, Miss Kim was gone. Amara felt a stab of guilt. She hadn't even thanked her. "I'll thank her when I can stand up without throwing up, I promise." A few minutes later, there was a knock. Amara opened the door to find Ms. Kim holding out a small bag. It looked like it was from the local pharmacy. "Feel better soon," the woman said with a kind smile. And then she walked away. Inside the bag, acupressure bands, ginger crackers, and 3 pregnancy tests. Amara froze. Her breath caught. Her mind started racing. And then she thought back. Her period had been barely a day of light spotting, nothing like her usual cycle. She gulped water, waited, took 2 of the tests back to back, saved the 3rd for morning. All 3 said the same thing. Pregnant. Amara stared at the little plus sign like it might morph into something else if she blinked hard enough. Her fingers trembled as she reached for her phone. She didn't need to wonder who the father was. Do-Hwan's name was still saved in her phone as Bae, adorned with red and purple hearts. She couldn't bring herself to change it. She slid the bar, opened the message window, then closed it. She couldn't type, couldn't think. "I'll tell him tomorrow," she promised herself. That was 4 weeks ago. She was headed into her 9th week now. She'd had the ultrasound. She'd seen it. Seen them, the baby, tiny and fluttering with something Amara couldn't understand, but couldn't unfeel. She held the photo in her hand, stared at it, then looked at her phone. "Call him." "Okay, Amara. Stop being a scaredy cat and call him. Call him now." When Do-Hwan rounded the corner, Amara's heart skipped a beat. Military life had served him well. He wore a grey thermal shirt that clung to his body in all the right places. His walk was the same, his presence still disarming, and just like that, Amara's fear dropped. She wanted to share the news. She wanted to see his face when she told him. They had talked about children once, lying in bed, whispering about someday. That memory flooded back. He looked happy to see her. Really happy? But that stirred something else inside her. Because he had also looked this peaceful the moment she spotted him, that meant he was already at peace, with whoever he was with now. Still, she couldn't stop herself from smiling. She moved to close the gap, not wanting him to make all the effort. "Amara," he said, voice low and warm. Before she could respond, he swept her into a hug. His arms wrapped around her, solid and familiar, and for a second she could have cried. This is what I remember, she thought. He smelled like soap and fresh laundry and comfort. "Hi," she whispered, beaming. "Oh gosh, it's so good to see you." "You look good," Do-Hwan murmured, pulling back slightly. "So do you," she replied just as easily, almost like no time had passed at all. She leaned in, smirked. "Damn, you smell good." He chuckled, gave one last gentle squeeze, and let her go. They laughed. The ice was melting fast. As they turned to walk toward the cafe, Amara caught something, someone, out of the corner of her eye. A man. Approaching fast, familiar, but not placeable. Then he called out, "Do-Hwan!" His voice cut clean through the air. Amara instinctively reached for Do-Hwan's arm, startled by the urgency. Do-Hwan turned to face the sound. His expression changed almost instantly. Recognition, surprise, guilt. What are you doing here?" Do-Hwan asked. Mateo didn't look at Amara, didn't acknowledge her. He locked eyes with Do-Hwan, like no one else existed. "I didn't mean to crash your lunch," Mateo said. "I just—" His voice faltered. He sounded like someone realizing, too late, that he couldn't undo what he'd done. Before he could unravel further, Amara stepped in, head tilted with confusion. "Hey, do I know you? You look so familiar." Mateo latched onto the lifeline. "Yes, we've met. Let me reintroduce myself. Mateo, I'm in the same military cohort as Do-Hwan." Amara smiled. Big, innocent, too innocent. "Oh, so nice to see you again. What a coincidence that you're here." She paused, letting the moment linger. "Are you here to visit, Do-Hwan?" Her wide eyes stayed fixed on him, and Mateo felt the sting beneath the sweetness. She was playing dumb, and he was expected to play along. There wasn't time for awkward silences, not with Do-Hwan standing between them like a glitching wire. "Can I give you a hug?" Amara asked. Before either man could respond, she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around Mateo. "It's so cool to see Do-Hwan with a friend from the military," she added brightly. "Practically giddy. We'll chalk this up to baby hormones," Amara thought to herself. Mateo's entire body went stiff. "I can be a bit of a hugger," she confessed, patting his shoulder, "though I know it's not really appropriate in Korea." She smiled sweetly. Mateo didn't know what to do. He couldn't move, couldn't breathe. And whatever damage had been done by showing up unannounced, he knew not returning that hug, not pretending in this moment, would finish him. The nail in the coffin. When Amara let go of Mateo and stepped back, she observed the two men standing apart from each other. A perfect triangle, almost comedic in its symmetry. We have reservations for 2 p.m., she said lightly. "I'll head up and hold our table in case you two need a minute." She turned to Mateo. "Oh, and I would invite you, but I haven't spoken with Do-Hwan in a while. Maybe next time, if that's okay with you." Mateo nodded, forcing a polite smile. "Thank you for the invitation. Maybe next time." Amara smiled, then reached for Do-Hwan's hand. "I'll go up now. See you in a few, okay?" she said, voice soft. "Bye, Mateo. I hope we can get together one day." And with that, she walked up the hill toward the cafe. Her presence faded like perfume in the wind. The moment she was out of earshot, Do-Hwan spun on his heels, eyes sharp with heat. "What the hell was that?" Mateo opened his mouth, closed it. There were no words that could justify his collapse. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I shouldn't have come." "Damn right, you shouldn't have." Do-Hwan's voice cracked with disbelief. "What were you thinking?" Mateo winced. "I don't know. It made sense in my head, and now it doesn't. I'm embarrassed. I embarrassed you." The shame twisted in his gut. He hated himself for the choices he'd made. But more than that, he was afraid. "I don't want to lose you, Do-Hwan," Mateo said, voice rising. "If there's anyone who can make you doubt how you feel about me, it's Amara." Do-Hwan's jaw locked. Mateo kept going. "I hate her." Do-Hwan blinked, slowly. "What did you just say?" "I hate her so much," Mateo whispered. "I hate that you loved her. I hate that you still do. I'm jealous, Do-Hwan. I'm jealous of a girl who doesn't even know I was the reason her relationship fell apart." The silence that followed was brutal. Do-Hwan's face went slack, and then cold. He turned and walked. No words, no fire, just silence and the sound of his footsteps pounding the sidewalk, not toward the cafe. Away. Mateo followed. "Please, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it like that." Do-Hwan didn't stop. They reached the intersection. The red light glared. The crosswalk voice echoed, "Wait. Wait. Wait." Do-Hwan stood still, breathing heavily. Mateo reached for his arm. "Just hear me out." The green signal lit up. Do-Hwan stepped forward. Halfway through the crosswalk, he stopped and turned. "What were you thinking?" he said, voice dangerously low. Mateo had no answer. "Why would you try to control me like that?" Do-Hwan asked. His words didn't rise, they sliced. "You say you love me, but that wasn't love." Then he turned again, walked away. Mateo stood alone in the middle of the street, blinking back the world. The countdown signal flashed red numbers above him. Wait. 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 Amara sat in the cafe with one hand buried deep in her purse, her fingers trailing the edges of one of her ultrasound prints. She wanted to be excited. She wanted to share this moment with Do-Hwan. It was 2:20 p.m., and the baby had started to flutter, seemingly excited by the smells wafting from the kitchen. But she would wait for him. By 2:40, she knew he wasn't coming. By 3:30, her mouth was bitter with the taste of disappointment. Fire and brimstone rose from her throat, and ash settled where sweetness should have lived. She bolted from the cafe to the nearest restroom. The nausea hit her hard. By 5 p.m., Amara was back home. She had texted and called Do-Hwan several times. Nothing. Maybe it had been too soon. Maybe seeing her again would have been too fresh. Still, she sent one final message that night. I don't know what happened to us having lunch. If it was too much to see me so soon, I'll understand. Please know that we really need to talk. Sooner rather than later. Silence. 2 more weeks passed. No response. Amara had officially made it out of her first trimester, and yet she felt more alone than ever. She still sent messages, written like diary entries in the quietest hours of dawn or the stillest moments of night. She wanted Do-Hwan to have the full picture, that she didn't make the decision to keep the baby lightly, that she had hoped it would be something they chose together. But she heard nothing. Each message remained unread. She decided to stay in Korea. She wanted her baby to know its roots, even if Do-Hwan wouldn't be a part of it. I hope you enjoyed episode 3 of Love Lessons. Before you go, here are a few questions for you. Question 1. At the military base, Amara showed up glowing, hopeful, filled with love. But did she walk into a reunion or into the quiet funeral of her relationship? Question 2. Did Do-Hwan's fear come from choosing between Amara and Mateo, or from the terrifying possibility that choosing either would require facing who he truly is? Question 3. When Do-Hwan didn't tell Mateo about Amara, was he protecting Mateo? Or protecting the fragile fantasy that he could love 2 people without destroying all 3? And question 4. Is Mateo's desperation a cry for love, or a cry to break a lifelong cycle of being almost wanted, almost chosen, almost enough? Each moment means something different to everyone. What stood out to you most? Drop your thoughts in the comments, whether it's one question or all 4. Thanks for watching, and as always, like, comment, share and subscribe.